Hi, Gareth Hollis again. Welcome back to Everything You Never Needed to Know About Me. This is episode 8. Thank you if you've been sticking with me for all the others, or if you've jumped straight in. That's cool too. Yeah, live life on the edge. Do your own thing. Anyway, so bit of a disclaimer again. Still waiting on some of the topics to come up, such as depression, suicide, assault. So I'll give you advance warning of those as soon as I know. I'm using a random number generator. I know I keep saying this, but just a heads up if this is your first one of these episodes you've looked at. So the random number generator tells me what I'm going to be talking about each time, rather than me just doing it from a set format. Yeah, like you, living on the edge. So, number 1. I in fact forgot to say, yeah, there could be bad language there. There could be randomness, there could be tangents, there could be repetition, because I'm human, like I suspect many of you are. I mean, probably most of you, in all honesty. But if there's any AI or aliens watching this, thank you. It means a lot to me. Oh, actually, number 9 I've already done. Ah. 34. Sorry about that. As you can tell, this is not scripted in any way. But actually, you'd be surprised just how much preparation went into all this originally. So 34 is a song. Every silver lining has a cloud. Actually, it's going to be quite a quick one to talk about. So about the time, in fact exactly the time I wrote Garth's Christmas song, back when I was on exercise about 10 years ago, I had a bit of time left over, and I thought, I'll write a song for my wife as well. And as you may have gathered from previous videos, she also suffers with depression, therefore isn't always looking on the positive side of things, not always a glass half full kind of person, and tends to see like the negative in a lot of situations. What's the worst case scenario, rather than, well, it could be great. So the song was called Every Silver Lining Has a Cloud, rather than Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining. Unfortunately, when I wrote it, and I was quite happy with it, I wrote it in the style of Bon Jovi, because my wife's a big fan of Bon Jovi. That was the thinking behind it. Unfortunately, somewhere between house moves over the last 10 years, because being in the military, you do move house a lot more regularly than the average person. Somewhere these lyrics have gone missing. I cannot find them at all. So I rewrote them. The only bit I could remember really was the chorus, and unfortunately I don't think it's as good as it used to be, but we can only do what we can do, can't we? So it's out there. It may come to nothing, it may come to something. Maybe at some point I'll even find the original lyrics and see actually if they are as good as I remember them, or if the new ones are better. My memory is not the best of things, unfortunately, especially since depression and antidepressants and things like that. I have lost a lot of my memory, so it could be that I'm completely misremembering, and the new version is much better. I mean, I'm 10 years older. I'd like to think I've grown as a lyricist. Not that I've been doing lyrics for 10 years. But anyway, that's about as much as I've got to say about that one. Nice, short and sweet. Number 40. This is another song. So Our Love's Forever. Not a lot to say about this one, except that when I first wrote it was when I was on guard duty again, as seems to be a common theme amongst a lot of my lyrics. That's when I seem to get the time and the motivation and the I suppose boredom to start actually writing, when I've not got the other distractions so much. So Our Love's Forever, when I first wrote it, it came with a tune that wasn't mine, which was, in fact, it's a mixture of 2 different tunes. There was Savage Garden and Blind Melon, I want to say. I've forgotten now, actually. No Rain, the song's called. It was like a combination of those two songs, and yeah, I just put it out on YouTube because when I do offer collaboration, people always change the tune anyway, so I figured it didn't matter if it was using someone else's tune. The only reason it's got special mention here is that with working on Happy Anniversary, I needed a B-side, which and I thought with it being a CD, it's not really a B-side as such, so I may as well have like a C-side as well. It's not like a triangular disc, by the way. And the what I settled on was Happy Anniversary, I'll Love You Eternally, and Our Love's Forever. Now, I really like the tune, actually, of Our Love's Forever. Unfortunately, it's not my tune, so I can't really use it. So that's going to be getting a completely different tune. This is being made by the guy in India, the same one who's doing Happy Anniversary and I'll Love You Eternally. So I'm intrigued to see what he comes up with that, because it could be anything. He also changed the tune for Happy Anniversary after he suggested that it sounded a lot like one of Avril Lavigne's songs. Again, this is another problem with the memory, is that I write songs and I think that sounds familiar and can't place it, and it turns out it's not mine. Which I suspected, but I was about to say it's nice to have it confirmed. It wasn't nice. It'd have been nicer to have for someone to have said, no, that's all yours, because I actually really like that tune. But yeah, there's more talented people out there than me who make these nice tunes. But I suppose all music's copying in some respects anyway. All right, yes, so expect that one at some point. Happy Anniversary as like the A-side, and I'll Love You Eternally and Our Love's Forever as sort of a combined B-side to a CD that I'm hoping to release. This will be the first CD I've actually put out there and actually tried to sell. This is potentially my first attempt at actually making money from music rather than it just being an expensive hobby. So this is going to be potentially crowdfunding. See if it works. It might not work. Depends if there's any interest out there, I suppose. If there's any interest in me as an unknown person writing songs, and if people actually like the songs. But I thought Happy Anniversary might at least have some commercial appeal, and I tried to match it up with two other love songs, like happy love songs, not Love Lost or anything like that, and that could have a similar sort of theme. So if you like one song, hopefully you'd like the other two, and that's the story behind that. That's all I'm going to say on that. So next number. Oh, we don't have that number because this goes up to 50 because it's a random number bingo thing, and I only have 42. No 49. 23. Michael Jordan. Oh, 23 is books. Top 3 books. So, interestingly, actually, I don't know if it's the same for a lot of you. My favourite book, I should say, was not written by my favourite author. I don't know if that's a standard thing across the board. So my favourite author is, and has been for a long time, probably 25 years now, has been Clive Cussler. Unfortunately, he passed away a few months ago. So, yeah, a great loss there, unfortunately. I have loved his books, and I don't think he's ever written a bad book, certainly not that I've read, and I've read most of them. I'm currently reading The Oracle, which is a new one, although I'm only a couple of chapters in at the moment, so I can't really comment on it too much, but I'm sure it'll be amazing, same as everything else he's written. So with that, actually, it was Raise the Titanic was the first one I found. I was about 10 at the time, and I found it at my grandma's house. Yeah, she was a big reader as well. She used to buy from charity shops and car boot sales and things. So there was always a good assortment of different books there. And I just picked it up because I was fascinated with the Titanic. It was probably a little bit advanced for me at my age, but I really enjoyed it. And I've read it several times since. I've seen the film, which unfortunately I wouldn't recommend the film. It's not anywhere near as good as the books. But anyway, so gone off on a tangent again there. So in my top 3, I've got Well, in fact, that's a bit unfair because that's a trilogy. But the Millennium Trilogy by Stieg Larsson, again, R.I.P. Unfortunately, I found out as I read the books actually that he died just after he dropped off the manuscripts, so he never even realised how big these his books became. So the Millennium Trilogy, you might not have heard of unless you've read them, but you will probably have heard of the individual books, which is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. All three of those amazing books. It took me ages before I actually picked them up. I bought them for 50p each actually at a jumble sale at the school, and it was only because they had all three of them that I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And then lockdown kicked in, isolation, COVID-19, and suddenly I had a fair bit of time on my hands. So that's when I started reading those, and I just couldn't put them down. They're brilliantly written, and that's bearing in mind the fact they've also been translated from, I think, Swedish originally. So amazing story, very good translation as well. And I need to stop giving recommendations really, because you're all different people to me, and you've all probably got your own things you're into, but I would recommend it. Very good. It's actually my dad, who doesn't read at all. He also was raving about this, although he had it on audiobook because he's a lorry driver, so he does a lot of long distance driving and just puts an audiobook on like 15 CDs worth and just works his way through them. And he was raving about these as well when I mentioned it to him. It didn't strike me as something he'd have been interested in, but something for everyone. So also in here I've got it's two books. I couldn't choose between them, and they both to me mean the same thing really, in that the history behind them is that I was working as I was the duty driver at the time when I was in the Royal Signals at 7th Signal Regiment, which is now defunct, and I was picking up an officer from the airport, and on the way back we were chatting and talking about books, no idea why, and he mentioned these two books, and the way he was talking about them, how animated he was, how much he had enjoyed them, it really got me interested in reading them myself. So these two books were The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger and The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And I have to say, they well and truly lived up to the recommendation. And I've bought certainly The Time Traveller's Wife. I've bought a couple of times for other people when I've seen it in charity shops. Like bought it for my sisters because it was an amazing book. It was also made into a film. I'll be honest, I watched the film, and even though I'd read the book at least twice by that point, I didn't really understand the film. So I don't know how that would fare for other people. It just seemed to miss out so much stuff. And yeah, they often say the book's better than the film anyway. But that particular one, I was so let down with that film. But the book I'd well and truly recommend. And The Book Thief as well has had a film made about it, which I haven't seen yet. I will at some point, and I'm sure I'll be let down again because, again, it's an amazing book. So The Time Traveller's Wife is basically talking about the complexities of time travel from the spouse's point of view. It's a while since I've read it actually, so I'm trying to remember, but essentially he's always disappearing. He time travels, but he doesn't have any control over it. It just happens. He'll be doing something and then suddenly he'll disappear and nothing goes with him. So when he goes, he'll have no clothes, his fillings out of his teeth will go, no glasses, anything like that, and he'll just find himself in this random place in this random time and have to wait until he can come back again. He can't control it, and it's just all the complexities with that, and I just really enjoyed it. And The Book Thief is set during World War II. It's set in Germany, and it's based around this little girl called Liesel Memminger, I think it is, who's a young child who's been sent to live with another family out of the city and an evacuee. And it's narrated by the Grim Reaper, which is, it's an interesting concept. It talks about her as someone who gets into reading, but they haven't got the money, so she steals these weird books from different places. The first one being when her brother is buried, because her brother doesn't survive the evacuation trip. He died on the train, so when he's being buried, and she finds this the Gravedigger's Handbook that one of the gravediggers has dropped. She can't read, but that's what she picks up just because of the fascination. Anyway, this probably was a spoiler alert there. Should have said that really before the spoiler, but sorry about that. It's a good book anyway. And then getting on to my favourite book, my favourite book of all time. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to say this is probably not the best book ever written, but for me, this is a book that I've read 6 or 7 times at least. I've also had listened to the audiobook, and every time I read it, it just almost as soon as I finish reading it, I want to read it again. It's just great as far as I'm concerned, and that's Ready Player One. It's set in the future. It's set at a time when there's the world's pretty much run out of oil. People have therefore just conjugated around these big cities where they can find work. Therefore, there was a housing problem, and instead of building outwards because there wasn't enough land, they built upwards, and they put all these like ISO containers and caravans and motorhomes and camper vans and all sorts of things, that just stacked them on top of each other in scaffolding and basically built tower blocks out of them. And so that's essentially the slums, which is where the main character lives, in one of these tower blocks. And he basically lives pretty much his whole life is spent inside this computer game, which is a virtual reality thing called the Oasis. Now, the creator of the Oasis died and didn't leave any heirs. So what he did was he left an Easter egg inside the game for people to find, and they had to solve all these clues to try and get to find the inheritance. If you've seen the film to this, which is a good film, it's nothing like the book. Well, it's not that much like the book. The book is far superior, as books typically seem to be. I was actually lucky, and I won some tickets to an advanced screening of this. It was when I was suffering with insomnia, so I was up at about 3 a.m. and suddenly saw this competition on, I think it was Absolute Radio on the website, and I entered it, and I happened to win these tickets to go see this film of my favourite book of all time. To the point where even when I was in Oman and people were getting out to look at the scenery, I was just staying on the bus because I was just too engrossed in this book. But then I'm not really one for travel anyway. So, I say, searching for this Easter egg, and there's these guys called the Sixers, who are like a corporation who are trying to take control of the Oasis to monetize it better, because it's essentially free to use. Well, it costs a quarter, the same as the old video games, and that's for life. And they want to charge people a fee and like fill it with advertising, but that'd ruin it, because the Oasis is where you can do anything you want to. Basically, the world is literally your oyster in that. Probably, actually, literally, if you wanted it to be. So they've got to solve all these clues, and the only real clue they've got is that the guy who created it was obsessed with 1980s. That was when he grew up, sort of as a teenager. So 1980s computer games, 1980s films, music, fashion, everything. And people got so obsessed with trying to find this that they're doing all this research, that all this stuff, all this 1980s culture starts coming back and becoming popular again. And anyway, I'm deviating a little bit. Anyway, really, really good book. Best book of all time, in my opinion. Ernest Cline did follow it up with another book called Armada. Also very, very good. It's not a sequel, but there are a lot of similarities, such as the obsession with sort of science fiction video games and films that come into it. So that's also worth a read. But Ready Player One, if you haven't read it, please read it. It will change your life. Maybe, probably not. But it's definitely worth reading. Anyway, conscious of the time, I said I'd stick to about 10-15 minutes, and they all seem to be heading on for more like 25 minutes. So I'm going to call it a day on that one. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope actually you might go take away some of these books and read them for yourself. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye.